What inspired you to become an entrepreneur at such a young age?
But when I started entrepreneurship in the 80s, man, entrepreneurship was a dirty word. If you said you were going to be an entrepreneur, you were pretty much going to be. People say, "Oh, Kris, you're an entrepreneur. You must be a big risk taker." And I got to tell you, Martin, I am not. The biggest risk I could take is taking a job where my mouth could get me fired.
How do you identify opportunities in different markets?
So it's going to depend on the market itself, but usually, I like the idea of the red ocean, the blue ocean strategies. And if everybody's rushing into it, I always wonder why. If anybody would have suggested that, hey, you know what, in 5 years, Elon Musk is going to figure out how to send a rocket up and bring it back down and land in the same spot. Or there's only really 3 things that every great leader has to do and most leaders suck at. I believe our subconscious is our most powerful tool. If you're stressed out if you're not healthy, if you're not sleeping, those things are going to impact work. I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with a fair number of ultra high net worth folks as well. And the number of people on the planet who have achieved all their dreams, all their financial dreams, they have more money than they ever thought they needed. And yet they end up miserable.
Welcome to the Leadership Talks podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of today's most influential leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Martin Rovinsky, CEO of Boardseye, and today we have a privilege of speaking with Kris Kluver, a seasoned entrepreneur, best-selling author, and advisor to over 100 CEOs. With more than 30 years of executive leadership experience, Kris has guided organizations to achieve remarkable growth, including 8-figure exits and public offerings. As the author of The Aspiring Solopreneur, Your Business Startup Bible, and The Fable, Life on Your Terms, Kris empowers individuals and organizations to find balance and achieve their dreams. Join us as we explore this journey, insights, and strategies for living life on your terms. Kris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, right on, Martin. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I am excited. Can you start by telling us a bit about your journey and what inspired you to become an entrepreneur at such a young age?
So for me, I'm 57, so I call myself an old guy. But when I started entrepreneurship in the 80s, man, entrepreneurship was a dirty word. If you said you're going to be an entrepreneur, you were pretty much going to be chastised and cast out from ever doing anything corporate. And I was okay with that. I grew up with some learning challenges as far as the dyslexic, and I never really quite fit in. But man, I could always connect the dots for businesses and for seeing how those things connected. So it's been kind of hardwired to who I am. Plus, people say, "Oh, Kris, you're an entrepreneur. You must be a big risk taker." And I got to tell you, Martin, I am not. I will take a risk, but it'll be a calculated risk. To me, to be blunt, the biggest risk I could take is taking a job where my mouth could get me fired. Because somebody didn't like what I said. That to me is risky. But so I started my first of 16 companies when I was 19. I have built them, bought them, sold them, wrecked a few. And I've had the good fortune, like you said, to work with hundreds and hundreds of leadership teams. And we've actually been able to scale a handful of 4 of them from entrepreneurial to clear up into the 9 and possibly even the 10-figure range, depending on how you look at those. But yeah, just super humbled and feel very, very excited to be able to found my jam and where I fit in this world.
That is, that's everybody's, I think, dream, is to figure out where do they fit in.
And that, oddly, that's one of the things I talk a lot about with CEOs. Because when you do that and you build a team of badasses around you who know where they fit, and you've got a common vision of where the hell you're going, holy shit, the sky's the limit. But when we do stuff, even if we're pretty good at it, but it's paying the bills, but we don't love it, you're eventually going to suck at it. And that's just no fun. So why do it?
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of starting up businesses, you started 15 companies and have been involved in various industries. What are some of the key lessons you've learned from these diverse experiences?
What I've found across the board, and I've worked with crypto to aerospace to construction to medical, full cross section. And people always say, well, Kris, we have a really complex business. I'm like, okay, do you have employees? Yes. Do you have customers? Yeah. It's like, I think we'll be okay. The it's a little flippant, but the foundational tools of what makes extraordinary, those are universal tools. And one of the biggest challenges is when you get really, really smart, big brain CEOs thinking just because they can, man, it doesn't mean she should. And the
Yeah.
complexity, and sometimes it's like getting people to slow the hell down and figure out, no, where is it we really want to go, and building those tools. So the universal across everything are the basic foundational tools, and then figuring out how do we build great teams, how do we have clear vision where we're going, and how do we look at things differently and challenge, because we are in the most disruptive times ever. In my opinion, is the most exciting time, especially after the election recently, on where we could be going and what the next 10 years are. I think it's just going to be a rocket ship. It's going to be an acid trip of business and what happens in the world with business, with extinction events, but opportunities. But to do this, leaders are really going to have to look at things differently. The skills that got them from where they are to where they are today, from where they were to where they are, they ain't going to work going to that next level.
Yeah, you got to always be adapting with the times, that's for sure. How do you identify opportunities in different markets?
Well, that's a challenge. Okay, let me think. So it's going to depend on the market itself, but usually, I like the idea of the red ocean, the blue ocean strategies. And if everybody's rushing into it, I always wonder why. Usually, if we're behind the times, usually you end up following, and sometimes those companies do really well, but a lot of times it's to try and figure out and take a breath and look further downfield. I got to study business strategy at Harvard, and there's a professor who used the best analogy I've ever heard for leadership and for growth and development. And this applies to finding those opportunities. But if you've ever coached a 5-year-old soccer team, you go in and you drop a ball, and all the kids rush into the scrum because they're trying to help. Sometimes the ball goes that way, and sometimes the ball goes that way, and somebody's crying, and somebody's playing with daisy, whatever. But eventually goes into the net. When you look as those soccer players develop from 5-year-olds all the way to pros, the process doesn't change. Somebody still goes in and drops the ball. But what happens is you have an incredible team of badasses who know their position, and we trust that there's opportunity. And usually the two people do get out and they pull it, and they usually pull the ball backfield. But what they're investing most of their time doing is they're looking way downfield. They're looking out into the future. Where is the other team weak, and where are we strong? Where are their opportunities? And then when they're ready, and they see that, then boom, they hit it hard and fast, and they can trust that they'll move that as a unit. And this is where it's a similar type of thinking, in that when I can work with a CEO and get him to just take a breath and start stepping back and start looking further downfield. Where is the other team weak? Where are you strong? Where is the ball going to be? How can we start looking at it in different ways? So that's one way. The other way is an area that a lot of people suck at, is actually visualizing what extraordinary could be. And I think sometimes I look at it as my job is to really push with compassion and love, but fearlessness, to get a senior leader and then the leadership team to dream audaciously, bigger than they ever thought possible. If anybody would have suggested that, hey, you know what, in 5 years, Elon Musk is going to figure out how to send a rocket up and bring it back down and land in the same spot, or we're going to catch the equivalent of a 22-story building, and he's going to be able to take the pricing of sending something into aerospace from $27,000 a kilo to $1,000 a kilo. People would say that's insane. But if you set those incredible realistic or unrealistic goals out there and then back into it, but it's the first step is having the comfort level and the audacity and the willingness to go, holy shit, what the fuck can we do? Can we go there? Oh my! Rather than how. Everybody gets wrapped around the axle with the how. I don't care about that to start. Once you believe you can, once you know where you're going, then it becomes possible. But I don't know. That's where my head goes. Does that answer your question, Martin?
Oh, 100%. And I love the analogy of soccer. Well, first of all, I'm European, so I grew up on soccer, aka football, the real football.
Still football.
Uh, but I love it because I was also coaching starting at age 5 my kids. So that painted a great picture, and you're absolutely right. To get to the pro level or even just higher level, college or anything, the best teams are playing 5 6 steps ahead. They already know where they're going to go, and they're ready to explode on the moment that that opportunity comes. So I might steal that one, just FYI.
Good. And dude, I have worked with publicly traded companies where their senior leadership team is still leading and managing like 5-year-olds playing soccer. It's just a
Oh,
shit show. And
yeah.
they're succeeding despite themselves. But that analogy seems to really connect when you're looking at the different types of business and the way that people are running their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of working with publicly traded companies, overall, you've had the opportunity to advise over 100 CEOs and helped organizations achieve significant milestones. What are some common challenges you see leaders facing today, and how do you help them overcome these, besides playing like 5-year-olds?
it, One of the biggest challenges I see consistently is originally I'm from the Midwest, and I call it the Midwest martyr syndrome, where you say, "Hey, how's it going?" People, "Oh, I'm busy. I'm working hard. Yeah, I'm buried." And when I hear that, actually my ears prick up a little bit, and it actually concerns me from a senior leader perspective. Now, don't get me wrong. I've worked the 90-hour weeks, and sometimes you got to suck it up, Buttercup, and put the hours in. You do, but the reality is almost nobody teaches and helps coach and advise people to actually become leaders. And helping CEOs who are so alone, and then if they end up with a board or if they PE money or they've got partners that, they end up in this very, very lonely choke point where they can't talk to their board, they can't talk to their leadership team, so their poor spouse ends up being the sounding board on some of those things, and that ends up taking things at home anyway. But the biggest challenge, resoundingly, is getting people to slow down and figure out what's it going to take to become a great leader. There's only really 3 things that every great leader has to do, and most leaders suck at it. But the first thing is, it's their number one obligation is to be crystal clear on the vision of what success looks like and where we're going. If you don't know, well, then you're just going to keep meandering. And if you think about it, most organizations, most people go through life meandering. Oh, I knew somebody, so I could do this. Oh, we happened to fall into this. Oh, I knew somebody over here. Oh, there was an opportunity. Oh, this fell in. Very few people take a breath and say, no, I'm going to fucking go there. We're going to go climb that mountain. And it's ridiculous and it's unreasonable. Okay, how are we going to do it? I don't know, but that's where we're going. I will get behind that person any day of the week. Because then once we create the vision, then the second part is to create a team surrounding yourself that understand how are they contributing to achieve that. They buy into it and they understand how they're contributing to it. And then they have some sort of metric that they know they won or lost every week. So you have the vision, you have an amazing team, and then you go out and you continue to build amazing and big relationships. You keep it all rolling across the board. But so often CEOs continually get sucked down into the weeds and all this minutia and all this horseshit that really doesn't matter. And all it does is slow them down because they aren't getting to a point where they can build that team that says, no, this is where we want to go. Now, I'm simplifying it, and simple doesn't mean easy. But when that gets achieved, it works well. Again, using a Musk thing, I love how when you walk into SpaceX in Hawthorne, you've got 2 giant photos. One, Mars as it is today. One, Mars as Elon envisions it as a colonized planet.
Yeah.
That right there, that gives everybody who walks through those doors their why. No, I mean, people don't say that he's the easiest person to work for. It's not, doesn't pay the best. It's like, but that's why they're there. That to me is CEO leadership. That is genuinely build that leadership.
That's awesome. And busy doesn't always mean productive, and I take productive over busy any day.
Absolutely. I have challenged people to just actually take quiet time. I remember I had a CEO come in. He managed multi-billion-dollar family foundation. He came in, he just plopped down in the seat across from me when in my office. And he's like, I'm like, hey, he's like, yeah, somebody told me to come here. It's like, okay, why? I said, well, they just said I should come talk to you. It's like, okay. So we start talking. But the point is that he walked out of there with 2 action items. One was to start having a date with his wife where he didn't bring his phone. So he started to repair some things at home. And 2, that he made his 45-minute commute each day without the radio or anything else on, and just use that as quiet time, just to start thinking. I believe our subconscious is our most powerful tool. And if you've ever stood in the shower for that extra 3 minutes and just had the water flow over the top of your head, and you get that idea, it's like,
The
bing,
best.
it's like, oh. But as a CEO, as a great CEO, if you can start to cultivate that as a superpower, oh my God, things start to really, really accelerate. But again, it's giving yourself that permission to do less. Now that same CEO pulled me aside a year later and said, look, dude, I really want to thank you. You actually taught me how to think. And this guy is brilliant. Don't get me wrong. I mean, absolutely brilliant. But he was truly learning how to think and look at how and who he should be developing. Really being clear on his why.
Well, you pretty much answered my next question, which was going to be tell me a success story where your guidance led to transformative outcome. And that's pretty transformative, especially with
I
the
was
follow up.
it was that was very, very humbling. I had another
Yeah.
one where this is silly, but maybe your listeners will value it. One of the questions I ask when I start an engagement sometimes is, "Hey, how you sleeping?" And I had one company I was in the process of helping the CEO go public, and I was talking with him every day, coaching him at 6 a.m. And he's finally like, "Dude, what the fuck does that have to do anything with getting this off the ground?" And just went off on me. And I'm like, "Okay, well, do you hear how you just answered me, asshole?" I literally said that. He goes, "Yeah." It's like, so do you think you're making the best decisions you are? You think you're in the best mental state? So I still work with this guy 5 years later, and he will still tell me at least once a week how well he's sleeping, because in a lot of cases he will tell you he feels that's his number one competitive advantage is to be making better choices, looking further downfield, not being reactionary. So it's and that's one of those things where giving yourself that permission to no, go for a walk with your wife and leave the phone. Go play with your kids. And if you're going to play with your kids, man, be 100% present. Be fully engaged in Barbie fun time for 20 minutes. Don't try and scroll half the time through there. But the more present you are, the more you give that, the more you can teach and pretend that realize, not pretend, that as a senior leader, you are the primary asset of the organization. And you have to protect the asset on a holistic, integrated way, not just from a business perspective. Because if things are a shit show at home, it's going to come to work. If you're stressed out if you're not healthy, if you're not sleeping, those things are going to impact work. And this is a very selfish, but it's a transitional and it's a transformational way of getting people to think how to look at their lives different and what is leadership and what their obligation is.
Love it. No, that's awesome. Great story. Thank you for sharing that. Let's jump into your books a little bit. The Aspiring Solopreneur and The Fable Life on Your Terms have been well received, obviously. What motivated you to write these books, and what do you hope readers take away from them?
So for the aspiring solopreneur, yeah, it is a mouthful, but I wanted the URL. So um, that one candidly is a little dry, but my head exploded when I would see how many people started businesses and they failed. It just frustrated the bejesus out of me. Dude, it has never been easier or safer to go out and vet and test and decide, do you want to start a business? And then very, very carefully step into that and not have to, you can still keep your existing gig. And when I hear people say, oh yeah, I went all in, I mortgaged the house, I went and rented an office, and I'm just like, oh my God, my head explodes. It's like, no, let's make sure that your idea is right. But when you do it well, you can go out and start, and the gig economy is exploding, and I think the gig economy is just going to continue to explode. And how people choose to look. And if you want to work 20 hours a week, I'm in my four-wheel drive Sprinter van on the beach right now. You can get away with anything. I got Starlink on the roof, and And I'm the luckiest cat on the planet, but we all can be. But so the book was intended to minimize the brain damage and exposure that people have so that they can safely do that rather than losing everything. I've started a bunch of businesses. I got clobbered once, primarily because I took a gamble with Google's algorithm and they didn't like what I did because it worked too well and they banned me on the server level. But other than that, most of them have been okay. Done all right. Not huge, but done okay. And then the life on your terms. This is something I do speaking gigs on, but I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with a fair number of ultra high net worth folks as well. And the number of people on the planet who have achieved all their dreams, all their financial dreams, they have more money than they ever thought they needed. And yet they end up miserable. Their spouses hate them. Their kids hate them. They hate themselves because they lost control of the narrative of what success is. And life on your terms is all about helping regain that, regain a different sense of purpose. Because when you can have that different sense of purpose, anything is possible. But we've given up control of the life, we've given up control of the narrative of what success is. We've abdicated that to the TV commercials, to social platforms, to everything else. And I think the more that we can take control of that on our terms, then we win. I mean, I worked with heavy hitters in San Francisco, New York City, Colorado, one in Kansas yesterday from my van on the beach. I mean, it's just like it's ridiculous, but we can change the narrative. We can do things the way we want to.
We got control.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So obviously, speaking of that, you obviously emphasize on the importance of balance in life. How do you personally maintain balance, and what advice do you have for others striving to do the same, besides being on the beach in an RV?
Well, I hate saying it, but I've come to the conclusion I think balance is bunk. That balance is no longer possible. But I do think that a healthy work-life integration is 100% possible. But if you let one narrative or the other take control, you'll lose balance. You'll lose that integration. But if you say, so my wife and I, we take about 2 months off a year doing some form of adventure travel, whether it's overseas hiking or big stuff, or it can be travel around the country. But then I also, I work with companies on Wall Street and other hitters in other areas, but it's putting the intentionality behind whatever it is you're doing. The devices we have today can allow you to work all the time or play all the time, but you have to define what success looks like. And you know what? Actually, I didn't get your permission on this, but hopefully you won't mind. I've got a tool that people can have for free if they want. They can go to my site, kriskluver.com. And within there's some links that'll actually get them to lifeon-yourterms.com. And there's a tool called the balance wheel. And on the balance wheel, it takes about 10 minutes. It's free. Trade an email for it. But it'll give them 4 quadrants of how to look at where their life is today, what success could be today. And then based on that, they can start thinking about what would amazing look like. So what I mean by that is we choose to live at 10,000 feet, buried in the mountains outside of a little town called Leadville, 100 miles west of Denver. We get to ski and play there, but I also get to work as much as I want. My wife has chosen to, we don't say retire in our household, we call it rewire, but she's rewired to 3 days a week. So she does 3 6-hour days. So it's putting the intentionality into it. If you do not put intentionality into it, life will run you over and you won't do shit. You'll just be sucked up in reactionary mode all the time. And that's one of the key things that I'm always encouraging people is how do you transition from that reactive state to a proactive state? Where do you want to be? What does success look like? Not just for, colonizing Mars, but for an amazing life for you. Martin, what's an amazing dad look like? What's an amazing husband look like? What's fitness? What are those things? And if we have those and we put the intentionality and actually do a little bit of strategic planning around that, amazing things can happen. But it's when we hope's a crappy strategy, I hope I'll get this, or I hope, and we let it slide. So,
I hope this pizza doesn't put 10 pounds on me.
I wish to find
Your wife's name is Rika. Am I correct there?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Her full
Uh,
name is Mubaraka, but Rika is just a heck of a lot easier to say. So
okay, it is. So obviously, you guys incorporate adventure and endurance into your lifestyle. What impact do you think that has on your work? I mean, it sounds like it has great impact, but I'm just assuming.
I think from a modeling behaviors, if I still weighed 100 pounds heavier, which I used to, and smoked 3 packs a day, and I was sitting there trying to tell you how to live your life in a healthy way, I think you'd probably call bullshit on me. You should. So I always have opportunities to get stronger for sure, but it helps me understand, and it empowers me to realize what is possible. And when I can start to see what's possible, then it's easier for me to, candidly, to be more unreasonable and hold others to accountability. About 9 years ago, I had my hip and my knee replaced for sins of my youth. It was all fully self-engaged silliness. But it was after that my wife was doing ultra marathons, 50-mile runs, and I thought, meh. And I started figuring it out. It's like, I think I could actually walk a 50K and not get swept. I could get it done on time if I could figure out how to walk fast enough. And that's completely unreasonable. So I figured out how to do it and I tried it. And it was the best thing I did because it created more discipline in my life. I did a few of them. And it really helped me. When we start to see that unreasonable is possible, everything starts to change. The worlds we live in and how we can coach and help others, I think, really changes.
That's funny. I never thought about it that way, but now thinking back, I definitely appreciate putting myself through what I did. I did a marathon as well. My knees took a beating, but I survived it. Check box. And then I got into road biking, and I did an 86-mile road bike, and that was one of the toughest things I ever did. Some of the toughest hills I climbed, but you definitely do appreciate it when you succeed and get through it and actually finish. Doesn't matter what place you finish, but actually finishing was pretty awesome.
Boy, that's fantastic. So part of the reason we ended up in Leadville, there's a famous mountain bike race, and it's a 104-mile mountain bike race. And when we initially moved there, we were out, and it starts at 10,000 feet. The turnaround point is at 12.5, but it has a total of 12,000 up and down over 10,000 there.
Oof.
And it is brutal, and the trails are terrible. And I did everything I could training, and I have never not gotten something done. And in that particular case, though, it was the year of COVID, so they canceled the race, and there happened to be big fires, so it was really smoky. But me being stubborn, I decided I'd go and try and do it myself. And and I had some people who were helping me a little bit, but I cried uncle. I didn't get it done. I ran out of light, and man, did that suck. But I think it's when we get beat up on those things. It's when we do try and we have those setbacks. Because anybody who says that they've never failed, they're full of shit or they're not trying.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
but so I hear you, and I don't know. I just when you said that, it still stings when I think about it. But I still love riding the bikes. Anyway.
Well, cool. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but I do want to finish with a couple things. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs and leaders looking to make a meaningful impact in their fields?
Really lean into being the leader that you can be. Understand that it's not really taught. Even if you have an MBA, the number of MBAs that I've worked with or people from, it's not taught. And understanding that leadership is different than doing. And genuinely becoming the best leader you can is the only way you're going to achieve big, big things. So I would say lean into being a leader more than anything.
Awesome. And before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about your current project or future plans? Any other URLs? How do they get hold of you? What's the easiest way to find you? Anything like that.
Well,
and yes,
thank
you
you very
can
much.
drop website. You can drop websites, LinkedIn, whatever you want.
All right. Thank you very much. They can reach out to me at Kris with a K, Kris, Kluver, Kluver, at kriskluver.com. And I'm starting. I'm starting to expand my peer circles, which is a peer accountability group that's focused on three things. But it's one, it's for problem solving. Two, it's for building leaders, and three, on how to scale businesses. And we'll be accepting applications after the first of the year for creating some new peer circles. If people are interested, love to hear from them.
Awesome. Thank you, Kris, for sharing your insights and experience with us today. It's been a pleasure having you on the Leadership Talks podcast. And to our listeners, be sure to check out Kris's books and his website and learn more about his work at Life on Your Terms. And until next time, let's keep leading with purpose and passion. Thank you, Kris.
Hey, thank you. Keep smiling.
Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Talks. Don't forget to subscribe for more insightful conversations with industry leaders. Your support means a lot to us.